what set off this latest election?
Well, Gemma, it looks like all roads lead to Netanyahu. He's the most extraordinary politician I've ever seen. I lived in Israel for 6 years. He's the great Houdini of politics. They think that he's finished and he keeps coming back. He lost the election, but it looks like a manoeuvre by him. Every 5 years, the Israeli parliament renews a law for the West Bank. The West Bank, so-called, because it's the West Bank of the Jordan River. It's the Palestinian territories, according to the Australian government. That has two sets of laws in the one geographic area. Israel has a law for Israeli settlers, a civilian law, and Israel has a law that the Palestinians are under Israeli military law, so the army is in charge. Every 5 years they renew this. On this occasion, Netanyahu, who agrees with this, got his supporters to vote against it, which has brought the government down. It's an extraordinary political manoeuvre.
So he's at the ready?
He's ready. I would think, based on my assessment, that he'll be returned. He'll come back to power in October. He's already the longest serving, and, you know, it's really extraordinary performance.
So as far as the choice that Israelis face in this election, is it too simplistic to say it's either back to Netanyahu or back to gridlock?
Well, it's the battle between the far right. There's no centrist candidate, there's no Labor Party. This is between Naftali Bennett, who's very far right-wing, and Benjamin Netanyahu, who's very far right-wing. So these are two pro annexation politicians, essentially. Both of them essentially have opposed a Palestinian state, although Naftali Bennett's more upfront about it. With Benjamin Netanyahu, it's been, in effect, the actions. But this is what the battle's about. It's a battle within the far right.
And so, I mean, you've touched on it there, but the real-world outcomes, what this result is riding on, what would you say that is? Well,
it's about, both politicians have talked at different times about annexing the West Bank, making it part of Israel, which would put an end to, a Palestinian state. Naftali Bennett's been more upfront about it, but I think that Benjamin Netanyahu would be emboldened. If he won the next election, I think he would think the time has come for us to simply unilaterally annex the West Bank and make it part of Israel, which would be the death of a Palestinian state.
And John, 5 elections in 4 years, I mean, that's a lot of election fatigue. What is it about the system or the makeup of it that sees this many elections?
Yeah, they have a very fragile coalition system, many different parties. For example, Naftali Bennett has some Arab members of the parliament who are part of his coalition. They have settler groups, they have religious groups. And so it's a constant battle to try to convince all the different small parties to agree with you. It's an inherently unstable system. It has been for the last few years. There is so many divisions within Israel. The Arab community, the religious Jewish people, the secular Jewish people, the ultra-Orthodox, the national religious, that it's almost impossible to run a stable coalition.